Hey everyone, it's Rachel. Today I'm going to talk about how you should choose your first guitar and amp. I'll be covering some factors that I think are important to consider when making this decision, and I'll also give you some advice and general guidance on some budget-friendly instruments and amps that I think will be great for beginners to start out with. So let's start with the guitar. I only have experience with electric guitars, so that's what I'll be covering here. There are a number of different things you probably want to keep in mind when choosing your first guitar. I think one of the most important things as a beginner is choosing a guitar that really inspires you to play it. So that means you'll definitely want to think about what style of guitar looks the coolest to you and which one you'd be most excited about getting. There are a number of different classic guitar body styles, one of which is the Fender Strat, which I have right here. So that might be an option if you like how this guitar looks. In the same vein as the Strat is the Super Strat, which takes inspiration from that style and has the two cutaways, as you can see here. This one is an Ibanez model, which is a little bit more pointy and more metal looking, but that is another option if you like the Strat look but might want something a little bit different. Now I don't have one to show you because I personally prefer the Super Strat style of guitar, but another hugely popular guitar design is the Gibson Les Paul look, or single cut, and you'll find that across many different brands as well. You'll find many variations of all these styles of guitars, as well as some other ones like the Telecaster, but these are kind of the general body shapes you can expect to see. So definitely take some time to decide which style of guitar speaks to you the most. Another important thing to think about here is the type of music that you are most interested in playing. If you are at all considering the possibility of playing rock, punk, hard rock, or metal, I would definitely consider and highly recommend getting a guitar with at least one humbucker. This guitar right here has two humbuckers, one in the bridge and one in the neck. The guitar's pickups are what gets the sound from the strings to your amp, and they are really important. Humbuckers help a lot with reducing any sort of hum you might be getting if you're playing with high distortion and gain, like you might be doing if you're playing hard rock and metal, and it's what most hard rock and metal bands use with their music. Of course, there will be some exceptions of some bands that play with single coil pickups and have a really heavy tone, but generally, if you're looking to play heavier music and get a heavier tone, you'll want to have a humbucker in the bridge position. On the other hand, this guitar right here has three single coil pickups in the neck, middle, and bridge. This guitar right here was actually my first guitar, and while it's a good guitar overall for what it is and for its cost, it's a good value. I'll talk about it a bit more later. It did not have a humbucking pickup, and that was one of the reasons why I decided to upgrade to a new guitar so early into my playing. Single coil pickups can be great as well, especially if you're looking to get a more twangy or Stratty style tone, and obviously there's lots of amazing players who play with three single coil pickups and sound amazing. But if you're just starting out and you're not totally sure what type of music you want to play, I think the best thing you can do is get a guitar with at least one humbucker so that you're able to switch between genres a little bit easier and be more likely to get the tones you want for lots of different styles of music. Another important thing I think beginners should keep in mind is to avoid guitars that have Floyd Rose or floating bridges. This guitar right here is an example of that. It has a whammy bar right here, which moves the bridge up and down, which will change the pitch of the note. While this can be a lot of fun to play around with, it can also make changing the strings and tunings pretty difficult because you have to make sure to maintain the balance and push and pull of the springs and the string tension at the bridge, which makes it quite a process to change the strings. For me, 3 years in, I still struggle a bit every time I go to change the strings on this guitar, so I just recommend avoiding it if you can to save yourself some headache as a beginner. Instead, I'd recommend getting a guitar with a fixed or hardtail bridge like this one here. It just stays put right here, so it makes it really easy to change strings and also to change between different tunings. I end up using this guitar a lot more than my guitar with the Floyd Rose, just because it's so easy to change between different tunings when I'm playing different songs by different bands. On many entry-level guitars, you might find a different sort of tremolo. This guitar right here actually has a whammy bar that I just don't have attached right now, but the bridge only goes one direction, so it still is fine to change the strings. You probably won't want to use the whammy bar much because it'll make the guitar go out of tune, but it is okay to get a guitar with that. You just want to avoid the two-way floating Floyd Rose style tremolo system. So I think those are the main things I would try to keep in mind when finding your first guitar, but basically you just really want to find one that you think is really cool and will inspire you to play it, and that will also be able to handle a variety of different genres and music, since you might not know exactly what you're going to play with it yet. Now that you have these general things that you can keep in mind when you're looking for your first guitar, you might be wondering how you should narrow down the vast number of options available to you. Of course, one thing that we haven't talked about yet that is important to keep in mind is what your budget is. There are guitars for every budget, so it's important to think about what you value most and what you're willing to spend on your first guitar. One option that might be the best for most people out there is to start with a guitar that is on the cheaper side but still high quality. So in the $200 to $300 range, there are lots of really high quality guitars for the price, and all sorts of brands make these guitars, and they are really good places to start. They might not last you forever, but they will definitely get you introduced to the instrument and you'll be able to play them for quite a while before you need to upgrade. If $200 to $300 is a little bit high for your budget, you can also find guitars for cheaper in the $150 range. But if you're looking to go cheaper than $200, I think I would actually recommend finding a used guitar. So you can probably get the guitars that are around $200 new for about $100 used, and that will serve you well. If you get a guitar in this price range, it can kind of let you test out the instrument, make sure you really want to play, and also figure out what type of guitar, what style of guitar you really want to invest in long term. I personally started out on this Squire Affinity model here, which is around $200 new. I ended up only really playing this guitar for a little over 6 months because I decided that I really wanted to get a humbucker in the bridge position to be able to better support my hard rock and metal playing. And if I could go back now, I would have definitely gotten guitar with a humbucker in the bridge position to start, as I mentioned in this video. But this line of guitars, the Squire line, is a great place to start looking if you're looking for an affordable but still quality instrument to get started on. So the Squire Affinity Strat was my first guitar, but there are tons of other quality guitars in this price range that you might want to check out. I haven't personally tried all of these guitars, but I looked up a bunch of reviews, and I think they are good starting places to at least take a look at if you're looking for a guitar in this price range. I'll have links in the description to all the guitars I mentioned if you're interested in checking them out further. If you like the Strat style guitars and are willing to spend a little bit more, like up to $300, there are also great guitars in the Classic Vibe and Vintage Modified series that I've seen great reviews for online, and you might want to check those out. Another guitar I've seen mentioned all over the internet for a great guitar for beginners is the Yamaha Pacifica. It has a humbucker in the bridge position and looks like it's a great, well-rounded guitar and very good value for the price. If you're more into the Les Paul or single cut style guitar in this price range, you might want to check out Epiphone, and the Epiphone Les Paul Special 2 looks like a good value for the price, and I've heard good things about it online. And if you want something that might look a little bit more metal or super Strat style guitar, you might want to check out the Ibanez Geo line for some entry-level Ibanez guitars, or also the Jackson Dinkies. I've heard good things about them as well. Again, I've not played all of these guitars, I've just read reviews, but I think they're good starting points for you to check out if you're looking for a guitar in the $200 to $300 range. If you can, something that would be a good idea to do is to head into a local guitar store, like a guitar center, and just try out a bunch of guitars in your budget. It's okay if you don't really know how to play, you can just kind of feel the guitars, feel how they feel in your lap, how the fretboard feels, and you can ask for help from the salespeople if you'd like to get some more information. Or maybe bring a guitar playing friend if you have one who can kind of give you some opinions on what you should be looking for. But if you can't go in person or don't want to, it is okay. I actually got all of my guitars online and it worked out okay for me, but you'll just get a better sense of what the instrument will actually feel and look like, and it might help you with your decision. If you do get a guitar in this price range, another thing to keep in mind once you have it is that you might want to get it set up by a professional. These guitars out of box will likely have pretty high action or string height, which will basically make it a little bit harder to push down the string until it hits the fret, which will make the guitar a bit harder to play overall. So if you can, bring it into a guitar shop, see what they think, and they can probably make it a lot easier to play. It's also pretty easy to set up your own guitar, and there are lots of YouTube videos on that as well, or you might have a friend who could do it for you. So there are definitely tons of guitars in this entry-level $200 to $300 price point that will be excellent starter guitars. However, if you do have a higher budget and are willing to spend more money on your first guitar, that is okay too, and it is an option. You don't have to wait until you're good to get a nice guitar. In fact, it can make things a little bit easier because it will actually generally be easier to play. You might not need a setup right out of the box, and it will just have nicer components and feel a bit nicer. So you can learn on a nicer guitar if you want to and are able to. I'm not going to mention any specific guitars here because if you want to get a nicer guitar, you probably already have some idea of what you want, or you might want to research it yourself a little bit more in depth, but it is an option. Another thing you could do here is you could buy a higher price point guitar but get it used. Guitars tend to lose a lot of value the second you walk out the door with them from a shop, But if you buy used, they generally keep the resale value pretty well. So if you're not sure if you're going to stick with it long term, but you'd like to get a bit of a higher end guitar, you can do it. You can buy it used, and then you can always resell it if you don't end up liking the guitar that much. There are so many great guitars out there across a wide range of price points, so you can definitely find one that fits your budget and works for you. Again, I think the most important thing here with your first guitar, and really any guitar, is to make sure that the guitar you get will inspire you to play it and practice on it, and you'll just have a ton of fun with it. So now that you have your first electric guitar picked out, you probably want to know what amp you should get to go along with it. My first guitar actually was from a starter pack that came with a cheap Fender Frontman amp that I didn't use for too long, but that is an option. There are starter packs out there with some of the guitars I mentioned that include an amp, but I think I'd actually recommend getting the guitar and amp separately. There are lots of different amps that can be good for different use cases, and different people have different preferences, but in my opinion, when you're starting out, I think the best type of amp you can get is a modeling amp. Modeling amps tend to be relatively small and compact. They can go down to low volumes for practicing. They have a built-in speaker often, which will allow you to play out loud just with the amp itself. And it will also include lots of different effects and different amp models, which will let you play guitar sounds from many different genres of music. They also usually have a headphone jack for silent playback, so you can practice without annoying your neighbors or friends and family. They also often have USB connectivity built in, which will allow you to record your guitar as you play it to your computer, so you can work on a cover or just hear how you're doing with whatever you're working on. And that USB connectivity sometimes goes both ways, so you can get the audio from your computer to your amp, so you can practice along to whatever song you're working on. All of these things, in my opinion, make modeling amps really great for beginner guitarists. You might not know exactly what style of music you want to play at the start or what exact amp tone you want, and this will allow you to try lots of different ones all in one smaller package. This will make it so you're not locked down into one style of sound starting out, and you won't have to spend so much time worrying about pedals to get different tones either. They're also extremely practical for practicing, since you can just plug in your headphones and connect to the computer and you're all good to go. In the $100 to $300 price point, there are a lot of great modeling apps to check out. Since I got it a couple of years ago, I've been using my Yamaha THR-10 right here for all of my practicing. I also use it as a recording interface, even though I don't typically use the tones for my covers. This amp is a bit on the pricier side of that range. It comes in around $300, but I'm sure you can find it used for a lot cheaper, and it also comes in different varieties. There's also a smaller THR-5, which is a bit cheaper. I had to mention it since I've used it so much, but there are lots of other amps in the cheaper price point from like $100 to $200 that you should definitely check out as well if you're considering getting one. I've done some research, and some other amps that you might want to check out in the $100 to $200 price range are the Fender Mustang, which comes in at around $100 at its cheapest. It also has USB recording. There's also the Boss Katana, which I've heard good things about, the Blackstar ID Core, and the PV Viper. Again, I haven't actually tried all of these amps. I've just looked up reviews, and they're very commonly recommended, so you might want to check them out if you're looking at different modeling amps in this price range. I'll have links in the description if you'd like to look into them further. Another good budget option for getting lots of different tones for your guitar is to actually use modeling software. So not have an amp at all, just have a audio interface that you plug your guitar into, which then connects to the computer and lets you play through lots of different amp tones and lots of different software. To do this, you'll need something like this Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, which is just an audio interface, so that lets you plug your guitar in here and connect directly to your computer. There's also a cheaper model of this that comes in at around $100, and I'm sure there are even less expensive options as well. Once you have this interface, all you'll need to do is download some software, and then you can listen to your guitar playback through that. There are lots of great amp simulators out there, both free and paid. I'll have a list in the description of some guitar modeling software you might want to check out if you're interested in going down this route. Personally, I actually use Bias FX for all of my guitar tones in my recent videos, and it's worked out great for me. All in all, like modeling apps, this can be a great option for beginners because you can do silent practice and get lots of different tones for a relatively cheap price point, and you can experiment with different things to find out what you like. One more option I just wanted to mention really quickly, if you're looking to get something to just get you started or that might be good on the go for easy practice in different rooms, is you could get a little amp that plugs directly into your guitar and then directly into your headphones. This one right here is a Vox amp plug, so yeah, you just plug it directly into your guitar, you plug your headphones in, it's battery powered, and then you can start playing right then. This won't give you the best tones or the most flexibility, but it's around $30 and you can take it wherever you go, so it can be a great practice tool as well. So those are my recommendations and thoughts on choosing a first amp as a beginner. If you do know upfront that you want a very specific style of amp or a specific brand or a amp that is loud enough to play in a venue, you can definitely go for a different style of amp. I just think that modeling amps will give you a lot of flexibility and really let you decide what you like, and maybe you can get a different amp in the future. But really, modeling amps can be great practice tools for players of all levels, and they will last you for a very long time and be a great thing to have around for practice and recording. So that's all I have for today. I hope these tips on finding the best guitar and amp for you as a beginner guitarist were useful and will help you get started on your guitar journey. While it's definitely important to find a guitar that plays well and that you really like the look of as your first guitar, it is also likely that your first guitar won't be your last guitar if you end up sticking with it. So it's okay if your tastes change later and you decide to change to something different. But if you follow this advice, hopefully you can find something that will work for you for a while you start learning the instrument. As I mentioned, I'll have links to the guitars and amps that I mentioned in the description if you're interested in taking a deeper look yourself. Again, these are just meant to be starting points for the different types of guitars and amps you might want to consider, but there are lots of other ones I didn't mention as well that could definitely be worth checking out. The best starter guitar and amp is going to be a bit different for everyone, but hopefully you are prepared now to go out and find yours. If you already play guitar, definitely let me know in the comments what your first guitar was. I'd be curious to hear. Also, feel free to share other recommendations for guitars or amps for the new players out there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.